Alright everybody, it's our Clow here, and I got cut off somewhere in the middle of the last presentation, so let me just do a quick refresher here to get everybody back up to speed. Was talking about the peculiarities of this video of mine being banned back in June for a number of arbitrary reasons, but again, one of the central points in it talking about Don King versus Donald Trump on MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch. Of course, then just last week we had this event where Don King actually endorsed Donald Trump at an event in Cleveland Heights. And so again, watch part 1 for a much more thorough rundown on that. But we were discussing how Cleveland Heights has the same English and simple values as 38E. And so 38E is interesting because this clip here from Erykah Badu's The Land, her film, and this is from the trailer, but has this street sign here, East 83. So inverting it, we get 38E, right, or 38E, just like that coding. So E, of course, is the 5th letter of the alphabet, and so it's essentially this 385 or 583, okay? So Trump Pence, okay, how it's written on their little, in front of Trump on his podium every time, the Jewish value for that is 583, alright? So that's very troubling in that sense, but when we invert that 385, you have to understand that is also the episode number of this ice cream episode of The Simpsons here, alright? So there's this 385, you see this episode is 385, so you have all of these inversions and just mirrors of each other going around. But that's very important to see that there, and of course this idea of the ideological paradigm shift coming up. You do notice everything on this side is much nicer and well kept than when he's transitioning over to the opposite side here where everything is more run down and broken in, as you see. But again, go back and watch the previous videos for more on that. This is just a refresher for where we left off, and so taking it one step further for you, when we were looking at Trump, the anagram for that is Mr. Put, and so to understand that further, we were looking at the values for the word put, and again you see essential, the angel of death, and dead as a doornail, as well as false miracles, rude man, and prediction. Again, it goes on and on, but do notice that the ES values are the same as rose, abrahadabra, again the word of the aeon and completion of the great work, as well as magician and ice cream. And so this is from that 385th episode of The Simpsons, where Homer puts this rose on the ice cream truck after giving the previous owner a heart attack. And so the occult connotations of that are simply overwhelming, okay? But so now, as we have caught you back up here, let's pick up where we had left off on. And so notice here in the middle of Trump's name is the word rum, and I do just want you to see the Jewish value for that does give us emperor, okay? And that just ties back to why he said law and order 4 times in his Republican acceptance speech, and why his hand is being raised by this man who, right, he was in this death match with, granted obviously fictional, but the cross behind him, the 4 points, the law, and all of that. It's just very, very stunning to see how it all ties in. So look through all of that, go watch part 1 again, and let's pick up this right here at Shimon Peres, alright, because there's quite a few things that I want to discuss with him here. And so do notice when we look at this screenshot that I had taken here for when CBS was doing a presentation on his death, you notice the date was September 27th, and so that's that inversion of 729. We were talking about this in part 1, and I've talked about it extensively in the past, but 2 and 7 is 9, September is the 9th month, and 2016, when you add all of those, is 9. So you have that triple 9 there, and him dying at the age of 93, and so it's just so interesting that for, right, Crowley and the whole religion of Thelema here, the master number is 93, and being immensely connected, right, to this phrase, love is the law, love under will. But you also often see it within this unicursal hexagram here, okay, not all too different than the Star of David. But also the number 666, which of course if we invert it gives us the very clear 999. So a lot to be said there. And again, Crowley, of course, you know, one of the things that's almost synonymous with him is this idea of perverse sexual magic. And I just have to note just the peculiarity of this picture is somewhat sexual in nature, because it does almost look as if Perez is grabbing a shaft right here and cupping the genitals down below there, alright? And so if we were to turn it for you on the side there, it becomes a little more clear. But again, only something that I'm saying because of the connections to this and the fact that they're mirroring things back and forth, and it's very clear to me how that all resonates, alright? So again, when you look through his coding here, take a look up top, there's quite a bit. But I want to pull your attention to the ES values down below here because they are the same as World War III, as well as I Hate Lip Sync. Remember what Badu says at the end of her So Long video. Again, you see all of these phrases, jazz and blues, on the ground, and let the man march, that also share the same values. Very stunning stuff. Do notice as well the symbol of 141 was the same year in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World that the 9 Years' War began, alright? So all just fascinating. Again, references to Will of Thelema, directly connecting back to what I was just telling you, as well as the Egg of the Aeon, Hairbringer of Death, and so forth, okay? So keep going here, because do remember, in part 1 we talked about Cleveland Heights. That ES value once again has the same numbers as Mary Fishmiss, okay? And so this is going to transition us into the second phase of this presentation here in the episode Homer versus Dignity, alright? So I guess this is all going to be in clips. Okay, so let me get over here, excuse me. And so what's very interesting about this episode is it was the 253rd episode, and so again, if we invert that, it is the we get the number 352. So remember, in my last set of videos we were talking about this number 352 because that is going to be December 17th this year, which leaves 14 days remaining. Again, the art card, what so much of this has come down to, but I was talking about the connections that has between October 2nd, and that difference is 77 days, alright? I'll articulate that a little more later on here, but so again, if we look at it as 253, that day this year was the 9th of this month, and was the day that North Korea performed its most powerful nuclear missile tests, alright? So very critical things. Again, go back and watch those videos, but that 352 popping up is incredibly important. And do remember that we were tuned into that number through 666 Fifth Avenue, where Cartoon History of the Universe was published. Again, this is the same street that Donald Trump's Trump Tower's on, Fifth Avenue, where he said he could shoot somebody and get away with it and, you know, not lose voters. All of those things, alright? So let me keep moving here so I don't get too tied into that for a moment. But notice that this episode, Homer versus Dignity, aired on November 26th, 2000, alright? So 2 and 6 is 8, 11 times 8 gives us 88. So if we take the 2 from 2000, we have 882, which is very interesting because it is the same as To Be Continued, as well as, Kearney and Jimbo. Now, why I say that this is so important here to keep in mind is, do remember that it is Kearney and Jimbo who are sawing off Jebediah Springfield's head, and again, remember, opening up his throat, and this lending towards the Pez theory. and what I was talking to you about so extensively in that series. But you do see a reference to 888, as well as I Am the Phoenix, the demonic elite, and the sublime new era. All right, so all of that very interesting. But keep moving here. This episode was written by Rob Lesbinak, excuse me. And you do see here a reference to End of Misery, as well as Illuminatus, and the number 53 coming up. And so again, going back to Badu's The Land trailer, you see here the inversion of that speed limit sign, and it shouldn't be inverted from the angle that it is, that we're looking at it. It should be regular. But do remember as well, that was the age of Ketis when he was hospitalized back on May 14th for those intestinal problems. And again, that date coming up in the Cleveland Heights coding. Again, all of this just tying just so immensely, excuse me, whatever, right? So look here, Taste of Charlotte, where we had all of the protests going into the night recently. You have a reference to In the Heart of the Earth. And again, remember that that is a direct reference to this idea of vitriol, which we saw come up with Barak and Deborah. Again, we'll cover that more a little bit later here. But you also have reference to the scythe as well as infernal deity. And look at these allegories here. Here comes the sun as Christian dead rises the third day and rose behind the cross. All right, again, thinking back to that image here, because look down below, the ES values for Rob, Lesbinek, whatever, is the same as Law and Order. And so with all of that, you just have to keep thinking back to this very peculiar image with Don King and Don Trump there, all right? But so do notice here, same values as A New World, as well as Freemasons, Twitter, Bloodwork, Killing Joke, Rest in Peace, okay? All of these very profound concepts, all right? Now, keep moving here, though. And so in this episode, the whole point that I'm flagging this Merry Fishmas line is because during this parade here where Homer is playing Santa Claus, Mr. Burns comes up with, of course, the skull and bones there, and of course everything with Santa Claus already, but tries to bribe him into throwing fish guts onto everybody. Again, both those words, 4 letters, okay, that 44, and you also have F and G, which are the 6th and 7th letters, so we add those and it's 13, the death card. And so if you reduce 13, 1 and 3 is 4, you then in effect have a triple 4, which is immensely important. All right, so again, all of that covered. But so looking at this here, when he's yelling Merry Fishmas, we have this bit here where Lenny's eye gets fish guts in it, and of course there's so much to be said about that, and I'm going to get into it in a minute here. But notice this Jewish value for Merry Fishmas is 829, and you can cross-check me on this, and we're going to talk about this episode later, but that's actually Lenny's license plate in the episode Homer the Great with the Stonecutters, that secret organization that Homer comes to belong to and turns out, right, is this prophesized leader. But in any case, it's so interesting with that because you have this reference here to the Fabian Society. Again, familiarize yourself with this organization and you'll also see how they connect in with the Pilgrim Society. But you also have this phrase, emotional terrorism, which makes complete sense when you think about, right, where we're getting this phrase. Everybody was so excited to see Santa Claus. Lenny got to take his patch off just long enough to see it, and he gets hit in the eye there. So all of these incredibly important things, but you have reference here to satanic ideology and satanic Arthurian king. And so of course this whole death hoax thing that comes in with that even further. But do notice now the ES values for that, as I stated earlier, are the same as Cleveland Heights and a number of other very important concepts. But so let's take a look at this though, because what I want you to see is that there's this really bizarre kind of running gag where Lenny gets stuff caught in his eye. And so since we talk so much about right, Obama or somebody's right eye or left eye or whatever being shot out. I thought it was interesting that there was a running joke on The Simpsons in which, right, a main character, a very interesting character, continually has stuff gouged into his eye. And so I wanted to take a look at Lenny, all right, because that's the character that it happens to. And do notice that his Jewish value here gives us this nice 505, drop the silence, there's that 55. And you do see it's the same as Beyonce, as well as Death of Us All, Dark Ritual, Shot in the Dark, as well as One Eye. You see occultism, satanic practice, infernal propaganda, and religions are bondage. So you look down below and you see a reference to Lilith, right, the queen of the demons, as well as secret, suicide, and shadow. All right, so we take it a step further. We look at Lenny's first and last name, Lenny Leonard, and you see that it's the same as concentration camps, cyber attack. Remember, that's a big thing I've been talking about from the Newsroom, HBO show, in which this idea of a quiet storm is somebody hacking into the mainframe and setting off the dams and releasing all of the water and causing all of these other untold catastrophes. But you also see Seal My Forehead, reoccurring theme, the all-mocking tongue, and again, like we were talking about in part 1, the alien agenda is a hoax. Now, all of this very interesting, of course, Lenny Leonard and this reoccurring theme here, we're talking about him getting hit in the eye, but look at his ES values. Same as Dallas Love Field, where Kennedy was heading from when he was assassinated. Also the same as Dallas Magic Clubs, the group that Eric Hogue, remember the one who was really adamant about getting the magic bill introduced in this bizarre article I've covered in the past for you. But it's also the same as groupthink, which is what is spilling out of Erykah Badu's head in her window seat video when she's assassinated in Dealey Plaza, in a direct hail to the Kennedy assassination, no doubt, alright? But you also see it's the same as Judas, My Guy. That is an Iron Maiden song that is 3 minutes and 6 seconds long. Remember, we dropped the silence, so 36, and the 36 triangular number is 666. It's also the same as Pizza Subs, alright? And you see this is the new intro from The Simpsons, in which after Jebediah is decapitated by Kearney and Jimbo, his right eye is impaled by ice cream. But again, the Pizza Subs in the back, and Zesties, which is heavily tied to the Pez theory, as well as this scene from The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the other complement in Pez theory. But when Tom Donovan actually shoots Liberty and was not seen, Rance thought he did it, but of course in front of the general store here, which you see also shares this same coding. You also see Freemasonry. 69, remember 6 and 9 is 15, the devil card. You see God is the devil, as well as Masks of Satan, Baptism of Fire, again thinking about that as bullets, and you also see reference to I am the Dark Lord. Now, I wanted to take a look here at what we got for Lenny Leonard eye gag, and it's very interesting because it's the same as Vestigiwabwa, but put on the costume, right? So again, very popular opera song, made even more popular by Pavarotti's performance of it, but it's the idea of putting on the costume and playing one's role, okay? And this is really not too far of a stretch from 15 years old. Eric Hogue here started dressing up as a clown, alright, and performing for children. Just very, very weird stuff, frankly, alright? And so you just put all of that together, and you see that the English and simple values here for this, right, Lenny Leonard eye gag, are the same as O come all ye faithful. And the reason I have this on here is because when Luciano was on Saturday Night Live, he performed this song, and again, he was the only one, the only incredibly famous opera singer to appear on SNL. And again, those letters 153 do give us coding for the Illuminati in the right eye, and quite a few other things that we've talked about. But so look here as well, though. because it shares the same values as here and everywhere. And so this is the translation of Hic et Ubique, which is the slogan for the Pilgrim Society. Again, please look into that further. And I also want you to see it is the same as Little League Champs. Remember, all the way back to part 1 at the beginning, I told you from Cleveland Heights, remember the phrase evil champions, because later on we were going to be coming across this bit down here with Little League Champs. Now again, this is from a Simpsons episode we talked about in depth, but each of these words is 6 letters, and so you have that 666, and each word begins with a letter that reduces to 3. So you also have that 333, and so if we add those together, we do get our 999. All right, and so you do have reference to the Final Curtain Call, Nuclear Flames Accident, the Paths of Thoth, as well as Merry Christmas. You see terrorist force as well, and a whole bunch of other very troubling things, but so very interesting to think about. Take a look at this. Another way you could look at it, Lenny Igag, and you do see reference here in his Jewish value to Savior. Again, the translation of Salvatore, which if we take his Jewish value up here and we drop the silence, 113 is absolutely the simple value for Salvatore. All right, and so I don't know if it's going to be too easy for me to find, but it is also the same as Eric Lee Hogue. So let's go ahead and tack that on for another bit for him there. But so I do want to find it for you now. There it is. Okay, so take a look at all of that. Again, references to Apocalypse, Miles Davis, Neron Caesar, the Sun God, Trumpet, all of these crazy, crazy ideas. But so just keep all of that in mind. All right, back down here to Lenny Igag, though. Holy Archangel of Death, reference to the Trilateral Commission. If you're not familiar, familiarize yourself with them. Also see here the reference to ubiquitous, all right, just like I was talking about in part 1, this sort of idea of the ubiquitous red cloak behind Trump here, again from Baroque style paintings, but often very violent and grotesque imagery coming from those, all right. But so now let's keep moving, because I do want you to see that, again, for this rendition, Lenny Igag, the English and simple values are the same as Hic et Ubique. Now, how crazy is that? Because that is the actual Latin version of it. And then again, with Lenny's last name added to this, it gives us the same as the English translation of here and everywhere, all right? So absolutely stunning, but it's also the same as cellular device. Remember me discussing Time magazine, writing an article on that in which Badu's eye was covered with her hair. Very interesting shot, but again, references to Matthew Brady, who I might have this image for you today. But it looks like I don't. He's the man who created a very infamous portrait of Abraham Lincoln, which appears in Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, in the same shot where we see the Athenaeum painting of George Washington with the bottom ripped off. But in any case, the image of Abraham Lincoln has a uncharacteristically dark, almost bullet hole looking indentation in the forehead. I'll try to put up another image of it later on for you. But again, just note all of that as well. You see this reference down here now to Illuminati, the Truth, 4-4, the Architect. Again, thinking about Obama as the 44th president, and again, just the immense significance of that number that I've talked about so much in the past. But keep moving here. Take a look. This is Lenny's full name, Linford Lenny Leonard. So it's 19 letters total. Of course it is, because it's referential towards the sun card, and so much of this has to do with darkening the sun. Okay, so now check this out. Each of those is an L. If we take 12 times 3, it's 36. I just explained to you the importance of that. You can also take it as a 333 if you reduce all of those L's. So again, take a look at this. The Executioner, East Coast Tsunami, and Hanging Gardens of Babylon. But the ES value for his full name is the same as Happy Pranksgiving, which is the name that Mr. Burns gives to this event where he's throwing, right, all of the fish guts at everybody. Again, fish guts, 4-4. Just, again, one of the infinite connections for you there. But look at this, also the same as Dorothy M. Johnson. This is the woman who wrote The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and it's also the same as Who Shot Mr. Burns, which, do remember, he was shot for darkening the sun, alright? So take a look here. Death of the Antichrist, you have the knowledge of 11, as well as demonic possession, dark night of the soul, and the quantum number. Again, that's something that's been immensely important in the past. We've been told to even the phrase, who is the quantum number, I believe is what came up. And so, yes, if you take a look at that there, not only the reference to Jebediah, but also to, Lana Del Rey. And of course, you see the information for Barack Hussein as well. But so let's talk, let's get back on track over here, though. You do see Atlantis all over again. But so since Mr. Burns is the one who's throwing the fish guts on everybody, and interestingly, since he's the one who's shot in an episode later on, obviously well before this one, I do want to look into him a bit here, though. So take a look at his Jewish value as 522. It's very peculiar because it is the same English value as scooped. Now remember, on the old intro for The Simpsons here, in front of Jebediah Springfield, this statue here, you have this scoops behind it. And again, clearly an ice cream parlor. You have the inverted star there, all the things, right? And so if we jump back here, if I can get my computer to cooperate with me, I just do want you to note how important all of that is. So if I pull up scoops for you here, just so you can see all of that on the right side of your screen, this is what the English and simple values for it look like. But so on the left side now, though, take a look here. The Jewish value for Mr. Burns, you have reference to Holocaust, as well as April 19th. This is just interesting because that's when The Simpsons actually premiered. You have September 10th, which is weird because, again, this is when the Cartoon Universe book was published, remember, from the 666 Fifth Avenue location there, but also Spirit of Death, Demon President, as well as End Time, Megaquake, Unseal, All Sealed, and Cultist. Alright, now the English and simple values for Mr. Burns, this is just wild because they are the same as Barack and Deborah. Now this is from the last set of videos that I had just put out, but again, check this out, page 166, Judgment Days. This woman, Deborah, saying, "Arise, Barack, arise." That's 1, 2, 1 with the first letters there, same as Antichrist, each of those 5 letters, that 555. Again, I've talked about it quite a bit, but you can see here the same E values it shares, but here we have the reference to 9/11, as well as sudden death, Zionism, the world, Masonry, Cliffoth, remember the tree of death, as well as vitriol. Okay, on the 352nd day of this year, we might see them going in. So I want you to see, again, just tying this back to Cleveland Heights, the reference to the 9/11 false flag, and remember that just being a code for 9 times 11, 99. Again, what so much of this boils down to in referencing that, okay? But so let's keep moving here because there's a few more things to mention. I want you to see here, since Lenny is almost always mentioned with Carl, his full name, and you can look into the smaller variations if you want, is Carlton Carlson. Now, this is very interesting because, right, Lenny's white, Carl is black. Lenny's full name is 19 letters. The sun, Carl's full name is 18 letters. The moon, now how wild is that? And you see each of their names start with letters that reduce to 3, and so they each have triple threes, which if we add together gives us a 666, alright? And so there you have that duality. I really wish I had the art card pulled up for you, but what so much of this has to do, this singularity concept. And even if we look to, again, up here in Cleveland Heights, having the same as Concordia Salis, it's the translation is unity through harmony. And so again, all of that just boiling down to these concepts of perfect circle, right? And the masculine and feminine, the supposed dualities being fused together. And so just so very fascinating. But in any case, keep moving here. His Jewish value is the same as the no symbol. It's incredibly important, but you do have reference to the Apophis collision. Again, remember that's what the peace sign is in heavy reference to, as cited by Crowley in the Book of Thoth. You also see reference to Satanic Illuminati and Lone Star State. All right, so all these references to Texas. Remember, a 5-letter word starts with T. 20th letter we could reduce to 2. You have that 52. There's that Satan number, excuse me, devil for you. You also see down below here for Carlton Carl Carlson, ES values are the same as Pilgrim Society, as well as Alanis Morissette and the Tetragrammaton. Alright, so incredibly important. I do want to remind you with Morissette here, again, just she's been given awards by the UN. She had that really occult workshop last year, this pentagram over her right eye, all the things with her. It's really overwhelming. And the fact that earlier on in this, her husband came up, right, when we were looking at Rum 2016, okay? And so again, those connections to the North Korean nuclear attack and the phrase silentium vel mortis, which is silence or death. And so also interesting to note this gal of constant sorrow here, since we were talking about all of this going into the inner earth. Go to my Legends of Light channel and check out the video I did on that episode of The Simpsons, at the end of which a group of them escape into the inner earth. And it's very peculiar because Mo tells everybody to get into the tunnel, and in any case it's very bizarre stuff. But let's get back on track here to finish this up. So for Carl's full name, the ES values down here, you get again, do what thou wilt, as well as Apocalypse, Angel of God, Eye Above the Pyramid, all the things, okay? Oil rig explosion, definitely something to see from that, because check this out, Lenny and Carl, when we look at them together, gives us the same value as Rigging International. Now these are the guys who put the Bay Bridge Troll in its place, and all of those things, alright? Now the English value is the same as Edward Hawes III, and remember he is the original, I guess the one who came up with the Pez company, alright? And so remember, Pez originally had the 44 bricks of candy in their logo, and always go watch the Pez Theory videos, okay? But so take a look at this. I do want you to see Lenny and Carl is the same as the left eye, as well as Satanic Ritual and the Golden Key. English and simple values, same as James Madison and Fortune X. Alright, now you also see down below Hermetic Kabbalah, as well as Conspiracy, Abraham Lincoln, the number 411. Again, Kennedy assassinated on 411 Elm Street, and all of the 114s we've talked about, if we inverted it as 11-4, including this being the 114th year since the Pilgrim Society has been in existence. But now you also see death sentence as well as androgyny. Again, these fusing concepts. You also see So Mote It Be and Galaxy Wheel. Now this is just very interesting to come up and having the same coding as Fortune X, because that's what we get when we look at this card as its whole, using the symbol up top as well. But I highly advise you to look into this card further. I don't have my text near me right now, so I don't want to give you the rundown not directly from that. But so notice as well, again though, reference to So Mote It Be, another thelemic phrase. And one other bit I want to talk about, since we're discussing Lenny and Carl, and this is really the end of the road for this presentation, but in the 115th episode, again the Stonecutters episode, Lenny is referred to as number 12. And so both of those words are 6 letters. There's that 66. You can invert it for 99. See the reductions here for 52. All of these things here is incredibly important the way his numbers stack down. But you do see the United Nations is a globalist organization, as well as dies January 16th. The variables of revelation and their lies are getting bolder and even more pathetic. If we look down below for the ES values there, you do see the same as subconscious, messages revealed, damage, Obama, right eye, Luciferian Mason, and mystical arts. So what I want to point out to you is that in this episode, It's written by John Swartzwelder, so he's also the one who wrote the Whacking Day episode, which we've talked about quite a bit on here. But I'm not going to discuss today. I do just want you to see, right, Swartzwelder, this is from, I can't remember what episode, but one of the little Easter eggs they'll always hide is sometimes this chicken over here has a nice 33 on it, especially for particular writers, producers, so forth, that they are, right, scrolling through in the opening credits there. So Swartzwelder, of course, has that on there. This 115th episode is really no surprise, right? Because remember, we were talking about 115 even earlier with all of this in the episode with the fish guts in Lenny's eye being the same as Law and Order, as well as Freemasons and blood work and all those things. And so now jumping back here, check this out. You see that John Swartzwelder's values, I just wanted to include this phrase here: the doomsday clock is the invention of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. And so it's just the idea that the watch group for nuclear activity is actually the one who instilled the fear into the people about the idea of doomsday. So now look here as well, the English in simple values, same as a story by Erykah Badu. This is how most of her music videos start out, as well as Lana Del Rey Honeymoon. That is huge. World Heart Federation and Erykah Badu Boarding Pass. Of course, remembering that that is from her window seat single cover. You see the triple threes here, the two, again, I've talked about this so much in the past, I really don't want to get into it again today. But so now keep going here and look here for John Swartzwelder. You do have the Bavarian Illuminati, 322, again 3 times 22, that's 66. You have Invisible Illuminati, Second War of Independence, the Holy Archangel of Death, and God of the Age of Aquarius. So now one of the last points I want to discuss here before I do kind of a wrap up is in this episode there are several mentions to the Egg Council, and so far so that during the Stonecutters meeting you can see down here this egg, and he was actually in the plant earlier, and another weird little joke here. But I do want you to see, since we talk so much about this idea of remember from Crowley's Book of Lies, the chapter on sucking eggs and all of the things that I discussed with that. Let me see if I can pull one of the bits up for you. So there it is. You can see, of course, all of the things that it shares the coding with now on the right side of your screen. But again, just the peculiarity of it all. But so you notice here reference to Goldman Sachs, as well as the moon god, the end of the age, and the reaper. Now the English and simple values are the same as Love Gun. Again, getting back to Kiss, as well as Fifth Avenue and Erykah Badu. Alright, so you essentially have the weapon, the location, and the person in a metaphorical sense for this. Okay, now very, very interesting. You see Freemason, knowledge, the 11, 16, again tying us all the way back to the beginning with Cleveland Heights and 16 letters, and how all of this so perfectly fits into the ending of the video here. But you also have reference to MK Ultra, Satanism, holy law, and this idea of God as female. Again, that would tie back all the way to the Dogma presentation I did and talking about Alanis Morissette, remember, who plays God in that movie, and just again all of the immensely important connections to be found in there. So now I guess one last thing, in the most recent episode of The Simpsons, I do want to point out that it aired this past Sunday, and it was interesting because that was the day that Arnold Palmer died, and in the episode there are multiple references to Arnold Palmer, very, very bizarrely. So note that, as well as the fact that in this episode Lenny's face is getting run into this bag of ice, and so ice has an English value of 102, all right, just like October 2nd, which is a very big day that I've been looking towards here to see what's going on. And so you can even see this is from when I started my channel until that date here, again, just a couple days away from us, but that nice 187 and this 63 or inverted 36 and 99, all the reductions that we can get from there. But just I mean, as always, just heads up, just something for consideration. It's never, none of this is absolute, but it is, I mean, absolutely fascinating in its own regard, though, as far as to just how deeply interwoven it all does seem to be, all right? And even for, here's another one, Egg Council, seeing that Doomsday pops up in the ES value here, and again, John Swartzwelder writing this episode that they appear in this Doomsday Clock being referenced, all right? Of course, you can also think back to everything I discussed with the Watchmen and Alan Moore being a ceremonial magician all throughout that graphic novel, which Time listed as one of the greatest graphic novels, or excuse me, one of the greatest novels of the 20th century, has that Doomsday Clock all throughout until the false flag alien is transported from the Apocalypse Island, as it were, and creating unity through that, all right? It's again this whole idea of overriding all of the current dogmas, all of the limitations, all of the things that restrict life and existence to the capacity that we live them in, and moving it into the next phase.